your thoughts on what's happening in terms of the fighting inside Rafah? There's so much pressure, such a spotlight on the way that Israel is conducting its fighting inside that part of the Gaza Strip right now, close to the Egyptian border, of course. What is your take on what could be unfolding in the coming weeks, crucial developments as we speak in that part of the Gaza Strip?
Well, let's look at the two sides of this coin. The first one is the Egyptian side. Egypt has been a silent partner, so to speak, with Hamas in using the tunnels. Perhaps there's also money for some operatives on the Egyptian side of smuggling in whatever you want. As we know, some of these tunnels were wide enough to have cars traveling in them. Having said that, this is something we knew about for quite a while and didn't raise this strongly enough with the Egyptians. So in order not to deteriorate our connections with the Egyptians, I think we're seeing a low-key emphasis on what is happening with the Egyptians, and all we're saying is that we're cutting off logistics coming into Gaza and not delving too much into the Egyptian side. We need that peace with Egypt. We need to put down any flaming that might take place. And so they've warned us for a long time about the Philadelphia area, being afraid also that some of the people in Rafah might cross over in panic into the Sinai. That did not happen. We've waited long enough to remove them, and now we're going to complete the war in Rafah so they don't have a war machine. Hamas does not have a war machine. This has two effects. One of them is telling the Iranian proxies, Iran and the proxies, we're not going to stop. We're pursuing this to the end, and this will happen in Lebanon as well if you don't stop your firing. So this is a message to our adversaries that we're not stopping. So strategically, this is something we've said from the beginning, and now it's completed. Not very smartly, could have been done quite a while ago, could have been done more cleverly with our coalition members, United States and other members who are asking about the day after. The next problem is that we'll have continuous skirmishes because Hamas may not be able to fire rockets at will, but they'll still walk around with Kalashnikovs and terrorize the community if they wish so. And they're going to be the rulers on the ground, providing food, sewage systems, education, and so on, because Israel has not provided any day after thoughts into this. We know that the Israeli government is busy from a day-to-day survival, right? Vis-a-vis the right-wing extremists who are pulling it to the right. So, and not dealing with the day after, as they don't know if they're going to survive tomorrow. So this is quite a dire situation politically within Israel. So Netanyahu is not calling the shots for the day after because he knows that the right wing will not allow him to name the Palestinian Authority as being part of the force that will control Gaza.
And we keep on hearing the U.S. asking for that plan as well for the day after. Antony Blinken asking and urging Israel to come forward with that plan as well. We keep on hearing that message out of Washington. Let's take a look at the latest rhetoric, so to speak, out of Hamas, the terror group, releasing a statement on apparent efforts around a truce hostage deal, again demanding an end to the war. It says the Islamic resistance movement has shown flexibility and positivity with mediators throughout all previous indirect negotiating rounds, accusing Israel of using these negotiations as a cover for the continuation of aggression against the Palestinian people. Those are in the words of Hamas. It also says Israel responded to their positive position by invading the city of Rafah, and Hamas has today informed mediators that the war would have to be completely ended before negotiations can continue. So, Relik, what does that indicate to you about where things stand. The families of the hostages waiting for word on possible movement on a deal that would allow for the hostages to get back home where they belong, 237 days since they were abducted from southern Israel. Your insights into what we just heard there out of the Hamas statement.
Well, let's think positive, and let's do a fast forward 2-3 weeks ahead when Israel finishes cutting off the tunnels, cutting off the logistics, and disbanding most of the warring capabilities of Hamas. That doesn't mean they can't shoot a rocket here and there from a hideout, but reducing them into guerrilla skirmishes. Are we going to be able to put pressure on Sinwar himself? Do we know where he is? Is he encircled by some of our hostages who are actually his playing cards? Are all the hostages in Gaza itself, or were they moved outside of Gaza somewhere in the Middle East? These are all questions that will come into play and perhaps are enabling Hamas to play their hands with low cards, as we call, but not show the other side what they have. And they're part and parcel of the Iranian onslaught with their proxies. And so they're putting all kinds of pressures, including South Africa, through The Hague. Some good news, South African controlling party has lost the elections, I think, today. So in this case, they're playing their cards as best they can. They're playing tough. But in this kind of game, there comes a day when things collapse. This may not be good news for the hostages, certainly not for the soldiers and the 20 to 30-year-olds who are captive that will be released at the end of the war, whenever it does appear. But these mind games that Hamas plays are torturing us, and they know exactly how to push the right spots. So we need to grit our teeth, and I wish our government would be able to show more empathy to the families of the hostages. That would certainly ease the pressure.
Mind games indeed, and every day counts. For more insights, Brigadier General in the Reserves, Israel Relik Shafir, what do you make of this stunning claim by Mossad intelligence, and what has been happening at these embassies in Europe?
Well, it's not so stunning. It's just that it was raised from below the table, above the table. Israel and Iran have been at loggerheads for many years. We know about what's taking place in Syria. And we hear every now and then things that are happening inside Iran itself and in adjacent countries. In Europe, this was kept under the table. But now that a lot of the Iranians have had a lot of success, so to speak, from locals, not to mention the Eurovision that took place
in Malmo
and brought about. So this is a good time to raise the curtain on the Iranian activities behind the scenes, using innocent people, feeding them data, etc. And this may have a boomerang effect, let's hope, on the European community's understanding of who's feeding what to their media. So in this game, there are, I would say, no innocent people playing, neither the Mossad nor the Iranians. But now that it's over the top, Israel does have the upper hand in that it is seen as part of the Western world, and Iran is seen as an operator connected to Russia, operating proxies around us, but also around Europe, and using immigrants in Europe. So this is might be helped Israel focus the European people on the fact that we're having a clash of civilization represented by Iran on one side and the West on the other side.
Which brings me to my next point, and that is the threat that Iran holds through Hezbollah across from southern Lebanon. We keep on hearing about these exchanges, the so-called tit for tat, but the fear is it could escalate into something much more. Your take on how things stand across that front as we speak?
Iran is interested in a war of attrition. They don't want a direct conflict that would bring the West against it. They're, I would say, very sensitive at the Straits of Hormuz that are could easily be closed by the Americans, putting pressure on Iran. I mean, there are a lot of pressure points on Iran that had not been used so far. So they are keeping below the threshold, and probably they don't want the Hezbollah to go into full war unless Iran itself is in danger. So they will keep below a certain threshold, and we will see more of the same until the war in Gaza ends, which will have a stalemate along the Israel-Lebanon border. Now, what happens to Israelis who want to go back home? Will they take the bait, so to speak, of some kind of an agreement that is not definitive and is yet to be continued in a war in 2 or 3 years? That will put a lot of pressure on the government that will be at that time.
We have just 30 seconds left. There are advisors suggesting that this war could continue for at least another 7 months. Difficult to assess, but is that a conservative estimation in your opinion? Just 30 seconds, please.
It really depends on what you call a war. If we're talking about skirmishes, a lot more than 7 months until there is a viable administrative group that leads instead of Hamas. Then we will see these skirmishes for many years. But the actual war as we see it now, the tunnels, the underground, it's probably going to be over in a couple of months.
And here's hoping that we get some good news that sees the hostages getting home safely where they belong. Brigadier General in the Reserves, Israel Relik Shafir, always appreciate you being here in studio. Thank you so much for your time.